Hey everybody, I'm back. I'm going to just address a couple of small things that that I left untidied during the last session. First and foremost, I got some helpful feedback from the linter, which is great. So I guess I'm just gonna jump right to that. I noticed this while I was working, but just kind of skipped over it. So in reducers, line 45. Is that what that said? Unreachable, right? So I've got a return here, which is the real thing that I'm returning. And I have this other thing, which is the kind of the stub, the placeholder that I had copied and pasted from the other versions that I was kind of moving around. Totally unreachable because it's right after a good return. So hopefully that'll satisfy the linter. Looks better. And the other thing that I noticed as I was briefly looking over my diff was in my action creators. So this promise all, this whole chunk here, this is fair. There's nothing necessarily wrong with this, but I just found it a little repetitive. You know, when you're calling the same function on every item in an array, really, that should be that could be a map. So I feel like that's tidier. Yeah, I feel like that looks and feels a little better. Functionally the same. And I could, of course, drop the parens here, like not invoke the functions, but instead just call them in here. But then I would have to basically, I don't know, put an arrow function in here, fn. I guess I could do that plainly. And then wrap the stuff. I don't like that as much. So get out of there. So yeah, I'll leave it like that, and then I'll just look over my diff before I commit. I did a whole lot of implementation stuff last time. Oh wait, no, there was another thing that I noticed. I think this is the last thing. So when I started adding the error logging, if I want to stay consistent with how things were set up before, I really want to return this dispatch, the value returned by this, because technically that's what I was doing before. I don't know. I feel like this is a dead end anyway, since there's no promise being returned by this dispatch. I don't think there's the potential to chain anything, but still, I feel like I want to be consistent and always return something from the promise. You know, because we're returning a promise from this branch. We're also returning a promise from this branch, theoretically, since this is an arrow function, and the inline value there is going to be returned. Yeah, so just to bring these in line, I'm going to key off of the reason error part. Something just flipped out there. So just look at my diff again. Oops. Oh my God. Yeah, okay. Lots of noise about line endings. What is happening here? I'm not expecting any output when I just hit enter at a prompt. Not like that. This is rendering garbage. I'm gonna kill the term. The fuck? Weird. What is this? I don't know. Is Anonymous hacking my shit? Maybe. But I'll dig into that later. So, action types, action creators, always returning some kind of value. And this is good because if later I end up switching this to dispatch something that's async, that returns a promise, that kind of thing, then I already have the return values stitched in there. Because it's actually kind of a tricky thing to track. If you neglect to return a value when you're expecting to be able to chain promises or chain values through promise resolution, omitting a return keyword somewhere, sometimes that can be a real chore to locate after the fact. So yeah. I guess this all looks good. Yeah. So let's see. Basic Redux plumbing put in place with data fetching. Sure. So All right. I think the way things are right now, I can move into, yeah. Oops. Looking for the Redux. There we go. I can look into prototyping a little bit of the UI stuff. Now, this isn't going to be serious or anything. This is going to be just kind of laying out some basic lists, maybe a select element in there for filtering by zone, that kind of thing. Little headers for the groups, maybe. Yeah, so I guess I'll dig in. So what I want to do is I want to, first of all, position my browser somehow so that we can see it and the compiler output. Maybe I went a little too extreme on the font scaling here. Do something like that. And I got to remember that I'm boosting up the font size for the stream here. Actually, yeah, that's a good point. I want this to be readable when I stream the actual gameplay, so I need to think about adjusting the font sizes so that they look good as is. This stuff, obviously, I need to massage so it's readable, but this stuff should be scaled to fit, and I'll start by looking at that, I guess. So there's a CSS file that was added as part of the Create React App stuff, and we don't need any of that, I guess. Oh God. So yeah, I guess I'm gonna do it in pixels. That's where I'm going to start. 48. Actually, I should go smaller because that was meant to be just basic paragraph text. Yeah, and so from here, now that I've established some kind of a default, I can use rem units to be relative based on whatever that size is. Maybe. I think that's how I would do it. And my editor is complaining about my spaces. Okay. Glad we got that out of the way. All right. Windows CMD only likes double quotes for this stuff. I don't know why. It's very picky. So we got that. I'll flip back over to the app.js here, and just think about how I want to structure this a little bit. My computer's freaking out. Show me what's going on. What was that? Outrageous. Okay. Fun. All right. So we don't need this text. We do need something though. And I guess how I'll start is by just adding a couple of components in here. We'll use these as stubs. So zonepicker.js, yeah, and what do I want to call this? Collectible groups. I kind of imagine the UI being sort of like an accordion setup, with a summary of the counts, basically just summarizing the progress. So collected of total, little indicators on the title bar next to the group name, and then a listing showing each of the items in that group. I don't know if I really want them to be collapsible, or if that's important. I guess I'll just call this collectible list, and the groupings will just be in there, something like that. And so for each of these, I need to import React. And it's important to do this because JSX syntax only works if you import this, even if you don't actually use that reference to React. So because these are, or at least one of these is going to be mostly stateless, or at least in my mind. You know, I'm going to use plain functions for my components. So so I will call this zone picker. It takes some props, and I like to always start with a function-based component, and then convert that to a class if and when I need to manage local state. So I scale up to it if I need it. And I guess the other thing I would say about the way that I'm approaching this is that I'm using a named function rather than an arrow function, because suddenly this has a real type context associated with it, and the name will show up in debugging tools, and I don't know. It also means that you can do. There's one other benefit, and I haven't thought about this really yet, but since function definitions are hoisted by default, that means that in the JS VM, they're basically moved all the way up to the top of the source file virtually, it means that you can do like a forward reference collectible list. So if I were to do prop types for this component, and prop types is a mechanism for kind of type checking or validating the data that you send into a component. So if I was depending on you know, props.items being an array or an immutable list of collectibles, which is a pretty certain thing, that I could explicitly say here, okay, items should be of a certain type of object. And actually, these days, React, so React used to have these validators baked into the React package, but now they're a different thing. So I would need to go into my front-end directory, npm install -s prop-types. I think that's the right one. Okay, I guess I got it. And so I would now, so now I've got these validators in scope. I can say array, which is not, this is not strictly correct. If I'm using immutable data types, then an array is not what I would be getting. So the best I can do right this second is object. And I can say is required to ensure that I always have an object getting sent in under the key of item. And there's a thing that I can do that's slightly better than this. There's another package called immutable prop types, and so they have validators pre-created for all the specific types that immutable.js provides. And I may bring that in, but I'm still kind of sketching out how this is going to work right now. So this will be fine to get us started. And so every component has to return some chunk of JSX or null. So for starting, I'm just going to return null. And I guess for zone picker, we're going to do something similar. Oh yeah, and so backing up a little bit, the whole thing about function hoisting, being able to do a forward reference to a function defined further down means that we can have our prop types way up at the top of the source file. So our component could be, you know, a couple hundred lines long. I don't know, that would be kind of gross, but I don't know, some of these stateful components with a lot of methods for fetching data or you know, computing display stuff or subcomponents, they could get big. And so having the prop types way up at the top is kind of like, I don't know, like in C where you have split implementation and headers. So this is kind of like your headers. It tells you about the signature of the thing that's about to follow. So it's kind of nice. So and I'm just going to do the same thing here. I'm going to say it's an object that I'm looking for is required, and then I'll swap these out for immutable prop types later on. So this thing is complaining because React Children needs a single React element child, and I guess that, oops, oh, look at that. And so I guess the problem here is that provider doesn't render anything. It expects one and one only component, I think. I don't think it lets you do more than one. So if we put something in here, then we're compiling again, and everything's flowing through. I'm going to try with 2 just to see what it does. So oops. Oh yeah, and so when I define these prop types, my IDE, the tooling, is able to look at those prop type definitions, and it knows that my component is expecting zones, of which I don't have anything to give it just yet, but soon, probably. Yeah. Okay. So let's see. So it's complaining because it wants only a single. And so to satisfy that, I need to wrap these two in a different element, a different component. All right, so we're back in business. So there's my zone picker, and I'm gonna build up an unordered list with some items, and so that's just a placeholder for the collectibles that'll go in there. So what now? I guess part of what I can do is I can connect my zone picker up to the store. And I don't know, it seems like I could cheat. It seems like I could reference the store right here and pass in the zones from the store. I'm not sure that works the way that I would expect it to. Yeah, so I guess what if I... No, I don't want to. I don't want to do it. So instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to basically... So there's a connect function that comes with the React Redux library. And you can basically decorate a given component with the connect function to produce a smart component, quote unquote. And so a smart component can subscribe to certain fields on the store. And yeah, so that's what I'm going to do with this. I'm going to say import, I guess maybe it's like connect from React Redux. And so the way connect works, I'm going to unexport this real quick. The way connect works is it takes a handful of different functions. So there's a function you can make called map state to props, and it receives state, which gets sent in from the provider, and this basically represents a read-only view of the store. And so this function is meant to cherry pick fields, maybe do some transformation from state into a new object, which will get merged in with the props object that gets sent to the component. So so I need zones, since that's what our component depends on. And I'm going to get it from state.zones. And I'm actually going to need to add a little more to this once we get going, really, because I need something to track what the active zone is. Because I'm probably going to have some kind of a selector, right? That's what this component is going to be for, picking whatever the active zone is. So we'll add some more fields to the store to accommodate that, and we would probably subscribe to whatever that is so that we can render the active selected one in this list correctly. So all right, and so connect, oops, takes that function and potentially others. There's like another 3 or 4 parameters, no, another 3 maybe, parameters that you can put in here. So there's map state to props, there's map dispatch to props, which will take our action creators, and it basically gives you a way to bind action creators to your component. So inside your component, you could call this.props.fetch zones, right? Which is something we could totally do. Like we could move it out of that top level, fetch all data, and basically drive the fetching of the zones by this component. But the zone data is going to be required for more than just this component, theoretically. Doesn't matter. Either way. And so connect returns a function that you pass your component into. And so instead of exporting the component function that I originally had, I'm now going to export the connected one. So in theory, and we can check this out, I guess. So I have the Redux DevTools installed, but I also have the React DevTools. And if you haven't used them, basically what we're looking at here is a similar view that you might see in just by looking at the the Elements view in Chrome DevTools. Except instead of just raw DOM nodes, it's basically focusing on components, like your React components. And so you can see here that we've got an instance of connect zone picker. So it's telling us that that's a zone picker that's wrapped. And here's the zone picker inside. And we can see that it's receiving 2 items as part of the props that are being sent in. One is zones and the other is dispatch, and dispatch is going to be like empty because I didn't cherry pick any action creators to attach to it. And then zones is going to be, this is our actual immutable map. With our actual data in there, and it's not much to look at. Like if you wanted to read the data, whatever, not great, but it lets you get some insight into what's being passed in, or if there's a piece of data that's missing. Maybe you're trying to debug why a component is misbehaving, and I think in my experience, 9 times out of 10, no, that's a gross exaggeration. From time to time, a component will misbehave because you're not sending in the kind of data that you think you are. So this is a way to confirm or deny what's getting sent in there, and it's pretty good. But for the most part, I'm more interested in the action flow, so I'll be sticking with the Redux DevTools while I'm working on this. Yeah, so with our zones available, I can switch this to be another list. So this .props.zones, and so zones is an immutable map. I'm going to transform it to a value sec, and I always forget if this is like singular or plural, so maybe this won't work. And then I'm going to map each item yeah, I think this is what I want. And I'm going to produce an LI, and I'm going to use a key because every item produced by a map operation should have a key on it, and it's going to be the ID of the item. And then inside here, I'm going to have the name. So let's see if that works. Nope. Oh yeah, I wrote this .props, which I don't have when it's stateless, because props is being passed in. So, well, okay, that seems to work. So what else? This isn't how I would want this to go normally, but I'm going to add a title attribute. And I'm going to borrow the description. Yeah. Really, the reason I wanted to look at this specifically was because I wanted to see what the ordering looked like. Because I really want the order by ID to be retained, and if I need to do an explicit sort here, I could do it, but I wasn't sure if it would be needed. It looks like it is needed. I mean, this one is out of order, so if I add a little sort by, I think that gets me what I want. And so I could I don't have to do this all baked in there. I can say ZoneSEC and then add some line breaks in there just to kind of show off how the transformation is happening. Yeah, I think that's better. And the reason I call it ZoneSEC is so that I'm aware that this is a lazy data structure, that it's going to be evaluated as needed. I don't think it's even evaluated here at all. Not until it's actually iterated over. Yeah, this might evaluate, now that I think about it. Yeah, I could just rename this to be list items, so I don't lie to myself potentially. Yeah, I forget if this is lazy or not. Mapping. I feel like it should be. But okay, so we've got a big list of locations here. What would be cool? I'm wondering if I want to turn this into a simple select widget or what. Or if I want to keep it, you know, rich HTML stuff rather than just a simple control. Because what I could do ultimately is set the app up so that it's basically it's like two tabs. So I can have a little, I wonder if I can sketch this out a little bit. Dust off my Wacom real quick. See if it's got any battery. Will you turn on? Oh. Please connect your device to your computer. I have so many cables. I think I got it. Uh-oh. I turned on the touch support somehow. That's a mistake. All right. So let's see. I think I have Sketchbook. There we go. Getting started. Yeah. No, I don't want to learn more. I just don't want that. So what's the plan? Airbrush, Markhor. I want BrushSize. I don't know how to adjust. Brush properties, okay. Well, this was a dumb idea if ever I came up with one. All right. So, all right. So I know that the screen is going to be divided. So we're gonna be talking about, oh God, some kind of a sidebar deal. So I'm working in this kind of space, and I'm thinking that I want a strip up here. And so one section will be for the items, the collectibles, and the other could be for the zones. And both of these, depending on which one was active, will have just a list of stuff, potentially with groups. So we can have like a bold section with the group name, or just a straight list of all the items that are in a flat list. Yeah, so that's kind of what I was thinking about. Let's just get rid of that, because that's horrible to look at. And so if we have that, then I can just use kind of what I have right now. I can use an unordered list and just add some CSS treatment to each list item to indicate whether or not it's active, or you know, or if there's an active click happening, or if it's the current selection. I could also potentially add keyboard controls, which would be kind of nice. So I could use left and right to toggle between zones and collectibles, and then I could use up and down and space to update selections. Something to think about. So I guess for right now, what I'll do is I'll stick with using the unordered list. I'll just kind of focus on styling it and adding some adding some interaction to it somehow. So in order to style these components, I'm going to add some CSS hooks in there. So I got a class name in there, and I can say the style is none. And will this reload? Yeah, I guess it will. Yeah. Reloading. Or not. It did it one time. Why not? Why not this time? Interesting. Well, good job that one time, Hot Reloader. You really had me going there. So normally I would be working with like some kind of CSS preprocessor where I could nest declarations inside here, but I don't have that right now as far as I know. So I'm just going to use conventional CSS for the time being, and I'm gonna try and not use the tag types in my selectors where possible, because those could change. So I'm going to try and rely on CSS classes. Oh, I see. It didn't reload the CSS when I edited the CSS file. It reloaded the CSS when I edited the JavaScript. That's what the deal is. It's not the end of the world, I guess. Yeah, so I'm going to go a little more generic than I have been. I'm going to refer to this as item, because I feel like some of the style cues between zones and collectibles are going to be shared. So maybe I can use that common class name across both. Okay. And that makes me think that there's another package that I might want to install. I think it's called ClassNames. I hope I'm getting the right one. Because I think there are a bunch of imitators at this point. And so with class names, what you can do is you can use this function, and it will it'll take a mix of argument types. It'll take straight class names, it'll take an object, and it'll use the key as the class name, depending on whether or not the value is truthy. So this will be great for so like active. I can set that to false for right now, but basically we could we could do a lookup in here to see whether or not this item is the currently selected item. And if it is, then this would resolve to true, and the current selection would get the active class, which we can use to color it differently, right? So before I go any further, I'll say item active, and I don't know. I like to go with garish stuff while I'm prototyping, so let's do like goldenrod, super garish, and text will be color, excuse me, will be white smoke. Gross. Okay, so that should pop whenever we get selection going, I think. It's nice that my CSS is nice and narrow for the time being. I'm gonna have to manage my line breaks over here in JSX land, because this stuff can get long if you let it. Just gonna reorder some of this stuff. I'm gonna put the key up front, and then I'm gonna line break on the next prop. Okay. I wonder why it thinks this. Expected 0 more. That's a bullshit analysis. God damn it. No, I don't believe that at all. No. You're doing bad work, IntelliJ. It's not how we do things here. I feel like, oops. I wonder why it's doing 4 spaces here. Is it doing that everywhere? I need to check my editor style, because I feel like this should be set to 2, and if it isn't, that's something I want to fix. Isn't there an editor config in here? Maybe not. So that's probably my bad. Yeah, I'll fix that later, I guess. Because life's too short to use 4 spaces in your indents when you're dealing with JavaScript. Just can't do it. So the top item in the list is always going to be none, according to me. So that's a special case where you don't want to filter your items at all. So I'll just leave that up at the top. And you know what? Yeah. So active zone is going to start out as null, as far as I'm concerned. I can actually move that up here even before I stitch it into the state. I can just drop a value here, and then we can look at props.activeZone equals i.id. Yeah. And a similar check that I would do down here would be looking for the null. So well, that's disappointing. I was expecting well, we did get the class name on there, but the color is not rad. Like, oh, you know why? No, that's not it. I don't know why. It's probably something weird like, let's see. We'll debug the styles real quick. So I don't see any color info here. Why is that? Something basic. Gotta be. Item active. It's not even. It's not even listed as something that's being overwritten. Woof. But anyway, I feel like this is something weird, like the layout is wrong. There's just nothing. There it is. Why would that be? Yep, that's pretty dumb. Yeah, I can't explain that. That's not. It's not a thing that I'm aware of. Why that empty zone picker dot item declaration would interfere. Doesn't make sense to me. Yeah, see, it's fine now. What the hell? Well, all right. So the next piece would be, let's see. in order to update the selection to like pick a different active zone. So really what I want to do is I want to start thinking about replacing these list item elements with something a little more, I don't know, what is the word I'm looking for here? I want to wrap some of this info. I want to have a reusable component that always knows about checking the active zone against whatever the ID is, and knows how to request switching. So let's see. Similar steps here. Zone item.js. Just add that in. Import React. Import prop types. So here's our basic component. I'll start by just returning zone item. I think that's, I'm unsure if this is going to be a smart or dumb component. I'm feeling like dumb is what I want. And I think I'll leave the list, like the container component, the zone picker. I think I'll leave that as the smart one, the one that's connected to the store. And yeah, this one will receive whatever it needs to do its work from the parent. So we can start to kind of spitball this stuff. I can demand that the caller provides a function for what to do when a selection happens, and I haven't defined what a selection is yet, but it's probably going to be an on-click or something like that. But that could also be hooked into the keyboard listening stuff, so I could manage the yeah, this is fine. This is fine. I think I want to change this to activate. I don't know why. Normally I would call it select, but I'm feeling saucy. So it's going to take that function. It's also going to take a zone. Is that fair? Yeah, I guess that's fair. Sorta. So the reason I'm hesitating is because I've got that special case, right? I've got the none at the top of the list. And so in order to have compatibility across all my potential options, I would need to create an object to represent that none, and make sure that it kind of duck types along with the rest of the zones, which means I would have to match fields. I would set ID to null, probably. But I guess really it doesn't matter what I set it to as long as it's not the same as any of the other ones. It could be a negative number, it could be whatever, it doesn't matter. It just has to be unique in the set of data. So I don't know, not the end of the world. It upsets me a little bit to kind of hide things. So by accepting an object where I haven't defined the shape of it anywhere in the validator, it kind of paints me into a corner. Like I need to pass an entire zone. And if years down the line, the zone object was this huge bloated thing, it kind of obscures the details of what about the zone it is that I need. So this makes me a little uncomfortable, but not super weird. I mean, it's only got like 3 fields, right? Name, ID, description. YOLO, I guess. So not a big deal. So if I go back to our original component, I can lift this one right out. And that's essentially what I'm going to be returning. My cat has been feeling sick, probably because it's been crazy hot. And I just heard him doing something, I don't know what. Hold on. What are you doing, buddy? Just gonna hang out there? Alright. So pardon me. Okay, so where was I? So instead of having this hard-coded value here, I'll do props.zone.name, and I'm renaming this. I'm calling it audible. Because I think by separating this from the identity of a zone, I could actually create a validator that has a shape. There's a way to do that. An object. Yeah, you can define like what fields on it you expect. And so that kind of satisfies my lingering concern. Right, and we also need whatever the active zone is, come to think of it. And so that is, what is that? That's a prop types. I guess that's a prop types any. It's not even required. We just need something to compare to. So all right. This is so long though. I'm just going to split it up, trying to keep things civil. a little bit anyway. This is always the struggle with JavaScript, trying to wrangle long lines and split things up for readability. It's a constant struggle. Okay, so we've got all this, and we also want on click, and there may be other ways to drive this, but I'm also thinking about the fact that we're going to flesh this out more later, I think. Maybe I'll look at it while I'm not streaming, but if I want keyboard support, potentially what I want to do is I want to set it up so that the focus can shift from item to item without updating which one is actually selected. You know, because maybe I want it so that I can hit up and down to move through the list, and then I want to hit space to actually pick whatever it is. One of the nice things about that is it means that I'll have less grinding in the framework. Like I won't be sending signals or dispatching actions every time I move that would result in the refiltering of the items list. So, or maybe not even the items list like in the DOM, but yeah, I guess we'll think about that. So active versus selection, those could be two separate things. But for right now, this is the language that I'm going to use. So I think that covers a good portion of this. So let's see, if I import zone item, I don't know, God, there's something tickling my nose. It's really annoying. Class names not defined. Right, good call. Okay. So let's see now. So these I can replace with zone item. And I can say on activate right now. I'm just going to say null, which will get me a slap on the wrist, but, and then I is the item. I'm going to expand this out and actually use item as the bind name. And then I still want the key. The key has to be like in the scope of the loop or the iteration. So if I set the key inside the zone item itself, it doesn't help anything. So there we go. And so things look pretty much the same. They're rendering the same way. We've just kind of rewritten or rescoped things to add some encapsulation, and that actually helps a lot with you know, the amount of code in there. Like this is condensed a lot, and so this special case that we had before becomes, so this is going to be my none item, which has a name, which is our label inside there. So I'm going to go call that none. I'm going to give it an ID of null, and also, just to keep things so that they're consistent, I'm going to give it a description, but the description is going to be null as well. And so now I can add a zone item, null for the callback for right now, and actually lowercase that sucker, since that's just a value. Pass that in there, and then also what I can do is update active zone, and I'll just put an empty function here. And that's nice because once we populate that with something, that'll just flow right through. I have to remove it from the map up there, but I'm still hurting for line space here, but better than it was. Always obey the linter, unless it's being ridiculous, you know. Remove those okay. So interesting thing. The active selection stopped working because I didn't supply an active zone. Oops. And so there's a slick way using React's JSX templating where you can pass, or you can kind of do like property unpacking, where you could do like ... props, and then anything that's in the props will become this equals that kind of thing. So active zone and on activate would be mapped in there if the name's lined up, which only one does right now, so that doesn't really help me a whole lot, but that's something that I could use to clean stuff up a little bit. Now this isn't too bad. Okay. So let's see. Why don't I update the I'll update the callback here to take a zone ID, because that seems correct. And then inside the zone item, I would wrap the callback a little bit. Oops. I would make sure that it gets the appropriate ID. And so, because this is an event handler, this would actually be receiving an event object. But I don't think I have a use for it right now, so I'm just omitting it. And I don't think the caller, the parent list, would have anything to inspect on the ID. I think really we're sending, or excuse me, on the event object. So we're just sending the ID. That should be okay for right now until we have a concrete reason not to just ignore the event. And we might. So just to humor myself, I can add a console log in there, and so each of these has an ID on it, except for this one, which has null. And they're all display block, I guess. So the click handler is like all the way across, which is great. We don't want like a tiny fiddly click handler where you have to like hit the text exactly in order to register. That wouldn't be good. And so now what we need is something that will basically act on the data that we're ready to send. And so for that, we head on back over to the actions. And really, we need a whole lot more than that. We need a action. We need a reducer. We also need initial state. Here we go. So for active stuff, I could share a single key. I could say like selection and then make it an object, and that way I could control like the visibility of which tab is active in terms of collectibles or zones, and then I could also handle which zone is the active zone, and so on. And it's not a terrible idea to kind of segment your store that way, so you don't have a bajillion top level keys. But for right now, I'm going to keep it simple, and I'm just going to have a top level active zone key in here, and I'm going to default it to null. And in the reducers, I'll slip back up to the top here. Oops. And so now I'll think about what we want in here, and really I think we only care about one thing. Default we need to handle those initial starting conditions, and then case action types. We're gonna do update. Actually, I'm gonna start with active zone update. I'll finish off with the verb. We'll do noun verb. Kinda, yeah. So with the update, my action is going to have a zone ID, which could be a number or could be null. I don't care to name it any more detailed than that, like maybe zone ID, that kind of thing, to suggest the nullability. But yeah, so for starters, I guess that's good. So now I go back to actions. Active zone. It was updates, right? Not updated. Gotta confirm. Update. Current tense, not past tense. Okay. And so here's the active zone, excuse me, update active zone, action creator. And so, yeah, so this could be an immediate one, I think. I could return type, action types, active zone, update. Zone ID, which I need to receive right here. Okay. So yeah, I don't know. I'm undecided. I feel like verb noun works better with the functions, and noun verb works better with the action types. And I don't know why I got that in my head. And I continue to flip-flop on this stuff all the way down. So eventually I'll figure out some compelling reason to pick one over the other, or I mean, I kind of have. The fact of the matter is, when it comes to the action types, I really like to have them kind of grouped together by what they're concerned with. And I don't feel the same way about the action creators. I feel like it's nice to have all the fetching things kind of grouped together. Yeah, I don't know. Somebody tell me I'm wrong and what to do, because I'm not sure. So we wired all that up. We have a way to transmit the data back to the store. And so in our component, we can now, let's see, which one, this one, update active zone, right? So what I would do is pull this out. And then add this second callback to connector, or to connect, excuse me. Map dispatch to props. And so this one accepts dispatch. Is that right? Because I feel like, yeah, maybe. I forget exactly how this one works. But let's try it like this. So I would also need import action creators from actions. There it goes again with the single or the double quotes. Yeah. And I still need that that zone ID. So I'll actually rewrite this as something like that. This feels a little off to me. I'm not sure this is how I've done it in the past. Well, we'll see. We'll see if I wire it up and it all just starts working. Then I can focus on cleaning it up, because it just feels a little off. Okay, so I've got some feedback from the linter here in reducers. Line 7, active zone. Okay, so I forgot to drop this into my list of reducers. Good call. Gonna want that. Okay, and so we're getting prop type validation checks failing for collectible list. We haven't really gotten there yet, but this error shouldn't interfere with any of the other execution stuff, so hopefully that's okay. Alright, so I don't see anything happening, which tells me that I was just wrong about how this works. I must have just forgotten. So let's take a look at the docs. So this is from React Redux dispatch to props. Just Googling this thing. Okay, so this is where they talk about connect. I want to know about this. So this is talking about different ways to deal with incoming state. It's interesting that this seems kind of complicated for what it's meant to be doing. So they're also saying that there's a way to just pass in action creators. And it's meant to be able to auto wire that stuff. Maybe that's worth a try. So what if I just comment this stuff out? I don't know if that's the shape that it's expecting though. Seems wrong. But what I should be doing is looking at the Redux. So this looks like it is sending the values, just like I hoped. I'm actually going to reload the page because I'm not sure how much of the store changes get auto-reloaded, but yeah, okay, so we switch from null to 13, from 13 to 21. Okay, yeah, this is working as expecting. The part that's not working is the active class. That's not updating. So why is that? I like this better. That's actually kind of nice. So we'll rely on just passing in an object of action creators. So let's examine this a little bit. So props active zone. Oh, that's why. I forgot to remove my little stub. There we go. Bam. Now we're dealing with fire cooking on gas, right? That's what's going on now. And there is one other thing that I wanted to do real quick as far as the CSS goes, and that is to switch the cursor to a pointer so it feels like I can actually click on it and it doesn't feel weird because it's got the little text edit cursor, you know. I think it's actually meant to show selection, the little caret, but okay. So that's all going, and yeah, I guess so. Now we don't have any feedback from the linter. And we have a bunch of edits. That happens, I guess, when you sit there and work for almost 2 hours, hour 45. So like I like to do, I'm just gonna read through the diff real quick before I commit my stuff. Got some sloppy white space happening here. What else? So we replaced the old hello world message with a pair of components, one of which is subscribed to the store for changes. The other one has the expectations of some prop types, but they're not satisfied yet. So we've got a known issue with that. And then we've got the zone list and the zone item. The zone item is a display component, so it's not subscribed to the store, but it is receiving store stuff from its parent. And we've loosely identified what it expects to receive in its prop types, which is nice. And here's the zone picker, which is kind of like the smart component. This is our controller, so it's managing how state is pushed back to the store. So our item doesn't need to know anything about that. We've also got a way to fake an option that isn't an actual zone. So this is our null selection, which also serves as our default value for the picker. And here we're connecting the zone picker, subscribing it to store changes. So that's reading data from the Redux store, and then also we're mapping in our action creators, which means it has access to all of those actions, all those functions that will send actions. So that's great. We added a new action type, active zone update. We added a new action creator, update active zone. We added active zone to the initial state. We built a reducer for it, and yeah, I guess that's pretty good. I can say that insert mode. Zone selection is wired up with prototype picker UI. Yep, that seems right. And I guess that'll do it. Yeah, so now we have a little UI that we can use to drive other app behavior. So we're setting a filter essentially on the other data set whenever we do this, and so whenever I'm drawing the list of collectibles in the game, we can just reduce that list by whichever zone it happens to be in. And what's interesting about that is we need to look up the membership table to know what's what in that case. And I still have to look at the data to see if I'm missing stuff. I'll do that off stream, because that could be a rabbit hole. Yeah, so not bad. We're making progress. It's not pretty, but we'll worry about that later. And It's also kind of cool that we started out with just like an unordered list with a list item everywhere, and then we refactored to wrap that list item into a custom component so that we could handle some of that boilerplate and manage some of the presentation aspects internally based on the props that are being sent in. So that cleans some stuff up. The fact that the state management is actually being handled by stuff that's passed in means that when we start to look at keyboard navigation, we can actually drive that all from up here because we have all the information theoretically that we would need in order to set the active item without having to go down into the presentation component. That's the plan anyway. That may not be true, but I think it should be able to work that way. Yeah, so making progress. I don't know how much more Rust work there's going to be, to be honest. We may be entirely into front end for the rest of this series. So if you tuned in for the Ferris, you're only ever going to see Mr. Rustlang at the start and end of the stream. So I apologize for that. You'll just have to check out the past broadcasts and see what kind of Rust stuff I got up to earlier in the series. But you know what? Even Rust server programs need a nice lick of paint and a nice front end every now and then. And React is a pretty great framework for building this stuff out. So I'm not sorry. Enjoy it. And hopefully you'll tune in and join me next time. Probably tomorrow. Have a good night.